The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. The Teleforum series is hosted by the Manufacturers Rep Council, which is a community of the Auto Care Association. The council is comprised of volunteer leaders from manufacturers rep agencies across the country. I'm Mike Boyer. I'm a member of the Manufacturers Rep Council. For those of you that may not be familiar with the Teleforum program, it's an outreach program the Manufacturers Rep community created to reach out to sales professionals within the industry. However, with some great feedback from members, the program has been expanded to offer all industry professionals ideas on how to navigate business and generate more revenue. Manufacturers Rep Council is proud to sponsor and bring this education series to the entire Auto Care membership. We have a diverse group of registrants listening in today: distributors, manufacturers reps, manufacturers, retailers, service providers, and educational institutes, and many others. Today's topic is Trump administration's impact on the auto care industry. Our moderator is Aaron Lowe, Senior Vice President, Regulatory and Government Affairs for the Auto Care Association. We are very excited to have three great panelists that are subject matter experts. So let's get started. I'll turn over the call to Aaron and have him introduce the panelists.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you to the Rep Council for sponsoring this very timely teleforum. I'm really excited to have a great group of panelists from our Government Affairs Committee, the Auto Care's Government Affairs Committee, on this teleforum. And so let's get started by introducing the panelists. Tom, you want to start things off and introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. My name is Tom Knobloch, and I'm Vice President, General Counsel of Dorman Products.
Thanks, Tom. Rodney?
Rodney Perini, President and CEO of CAWA, representing the auto parts industry.
Thank you, Rodney. And last but not least, Ray?
Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. My name is Ray Pullman. I'm Vice President of Government Relations for AutoZone. That's my day job. And I'm also privileged to be President of the CARE organization, the Coalition for Auto Repair Equality, which includes the likes of AutoZone, Napa, Advanced Auto Parts, O'Reilly, Firestone, and Service King.
Great. Thank you, Ray. So let's dig right in. This is an exciting time in Washington, to say the least. There is a lot going on in the city right now, and maybe a lot of questions and uncertainty, but definitely some interesting issues. And none probably getting more attention right now than tax reform, which since the healthcare debate, which continues to run below the surface, tax reform is getting a lot of attention in the halls of Congress, and of course in the lobbyist community. And one of the key, I guess, issues as part of tax reform is the border adjustment tax. And the border adjustment tax has been proposed to help pay for the reduction in tax rates for corporations. And basically, I think a lot of people have heard about the BAT, but just to give you a quick summary, it would force companies to pay a tax on products imported into this country, and those companies would not be able to deduct the cost of those goods sold, while exporters would be exempt from that tax. So essentially, the tax is placed on where the product is consumed, not where it is produced. Ray, AutoZone has been one of the leaders on the fight on the BAT. How do you see this impacting your company? How likely do you think it's going to be adopted, and what can we do to battle this?
Well, you're asking me to look into my crystal ball, which is something I do very well, but not very accurately. But I will tell you about your first question about how the BAT would impact AutoZone and frankly all of retail. It wouldn't impact AutoZone as much as it would our friends at Walmart or Target, where about 98 or 99%, if not 100% of their product are imported. But it would have a significant impact. We are members, AutoZone, as is Auto Care Association, and most of the, if not all the national retailers are members of a coalition called the Americans for Affordable Products. And over the years, what has driven not only the major retailers, the apparel folks, and certainly our industry to go overseas is American consumers demanding better quality at a lower cost. And so the BAT is in the House Republicans, primarily Speaker Ryan's mind, is a way to bring those manufacturing jobs back to the United States. So back to how does it impact AutoZone? Obviously, there would be a price increase, probably up to 20% on those items that would be affected by the BAT. But more importantly, just about every consumable that the American consumer consumes is going to increase by about 20%, and that includes gas and heating oil and diesel fuel and propane and food and clothing and apparel and shoes and drugs and all manner of electronics. So what that means for our industry overall is that consumers will have less disposable income to do what our industry has identified as $60 billion in unperformed maintenance on vehicles. And so that'll have a major impact on our industry and the ability to service our customers going forward. The Americans for Affordable Products has been very aggressive since day one. And day one, frankly, of the BAT came right after President Trump was elected, because the Republicans put this concept, developed this whole tax reform, which included the BAT, together last summer. And of course, conventional wisdom was that Ms. Clinton would be the next president of the United States, and that tax reform probably wasn't going to go anywhere during her administration. So the Republicans put this whole tax reform package, including the BAT, on the shelf until after Election Day, and then they brought it out and started dusting it off. Our coalition has been very successful in creating a lot of concern, especially among conservative Republicans and Democrats about the BAT and the future it would mean to the American economy. Right now, if I was a betting man, and of course I am, I would say that the BAT would not be part of any tax reform, which opens up a whole new can of worms, because without something to take the place of that $1 trillion gap that would be caused by reducing the effective corporate rate, the corporate income tax rate, then chances are we're not going to see meaningful tax reform. I would also say, as a retailer, that we're looking for income tax relief, because as a retailer we pay one of the highest corporate taxes in any industry. Unlike our friends at General Electric and Boeing that pay nothing, AutoZone pays about 35% in federal income taxes, as does all the other retailers in our space. So we're looking for some relief there, but unless Congress can figure out a way to fill that $1 trillion gap, I suspect that there won't be any meaningful tax reform in the near future. I'll give you a little history lesson, and many of you know this probably already, but the last meaningful tax reform we had was actually in 1986, and what drove that is that Ronald Reagan, then the president, and the Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill, actually liked each other, which is a far cry from what's happening today in Washington, and they actually agreed to the parameters of tax reform at that time, and they actually got it done. But as you all are well aware, there's just so many special interests when you talk about tax reform that I suspect that there may be some, but I don't think it'll be meaningful, and it certainly is not going to be in the near future.
Tom, do you want to comment on it from the perspective of a manufacturer?
Yeah, I certainly would echo Ray's thoughts. I mean, our biggest concern, is with ultimately what what happens at the consumer and the, motor vehicle owner, do-it-yourselfer, what happens to the price that our ultimate customers pay. I note that I think the president had early, in his administration had come out against that, if I remember. I'm not sure where he stands now, particularly after the healthcare fight that just went on, and whether that's kind of changed his approach to what comes out of Congress. But as I say, our primary concern, I mean, we have the same concerns that certainly AutoZone does from a corporate standpoint, but it's ultimately for the consumer, what's going to happen to the price, and it's just going to be that much more expensive to repair your vehicle.
So I guess the question is, to complete this subject, is there something that the industry should be doing on that as far as weighing in, or do we think this battle is moved on?
I think, Aaron, that, of course, AutoCare is a member of the coalition, and you have represented the industry well in that endeavor. But any time that anybody on this call has an opportunity to get in front of a member of Congress, and you just do a little research on what the bat is, try to apply it to what it's going to mean to your individual company, whether or not you're a retailer or a manufacturer's rep or representing vendors, and then just have a conversation with them and let them know that that this is not the right course. All of us would like to see American jobs come back. I had a conversation with a friend of mine at Gap, and they actually are going to open up a manufacturing facility in the United States that makes sweaters. Well, the deal with sweaters is that they can be made by machine. I didn't know, but that's probably one of the few garments that don't have to be either hand sewed or whatever. And so, yeah, they'll open up a manufacturing plant, but it'll be full of nothing but machines, and they'll hire two people, one to turn the machine on in the morning and one to turn it off at night. And so where are the jobs? When I don't know if you all on the call read about the fact that our CEO, Bill Rhodes, was part of a contingent of retailers that went to see the president back last month. And he and the president got in a little bit of debate about bringing manufacturing jobs back to the United States. And whatever vehicle they use, Bill Rhodes said that, it's going to be 10 years, maybe even 15 years before you're going to realize your goal. And the president's response to that was, I don't care. We just need to get the ball rolling. So, Tom, to your point, the president is focused on bringing jobs back to America. The president has talked about some sort of a border tax, but I think he refers to it more as tariff, that if Mexico, for example, is charging us 17% for imported goods from the United States, that we need to be doing the same thing to them. And if they want to go to zero, then the United States would go to zero. So I'm hoping that's kind of what they're thinking about. Tariffs don't go into the tax code. And once something gets into the tax code, it's very hard to get out, as we've realized over the last 60 or 70 years. And so we kind of think that's where the administration is going. But we're all kind of waiting on their tax plan, which I thought would actually be out by now. But as Aaron alluded to earlier, because of their stinging defeat on ACA, that they're probably going to take their time.
Yeah, and I think one of the other issues that's also going to be debated regarding trade is the North American Free Trade Agreement, which the president has announced he's going to renegotiate. They haven't taken the official actions to do that as of yet, but they're very close to doing that. And I think they're waiting for the United States Trade Representative to be confirmed. But that's coming, and I think anybody who has plants in Mexico or any facilities in trade with Mexico and Canada are going to be impacted by that decision. Although it's extremely unclear at this point what is going to be part of that discussion. The administration really hasn't clarified what they're going to ask for, and But it is something that Auto Care is going to be involved in, and I think we're going to be watching very closely and trying to make sure that our members are not adversely impacted by changes to the NAFTA, which I think has benefited a lot of the auto care industry. Okay, any other comments from the panelists on this issue?
Aaron, I'd just like to make a couple comments. One is,
sure, Rodney.
Essentially, we're talking about a tax on consumers, and we know when that occurs, it hurts the lower and middle classes. They will be hit the hardest. The most recent public survey said that the public is against that tax, a 52 to 38% margin. And then to reiterate what the other two panelists have said, I would encourage businesses on this phone call to look at the American for Affordable Products Coalition. There are over 400 trade associations and individual businesses a part of that coalition. It will keep you up to date on the bad issue and also be a call for action for you to do things in your communities in order to oppose the bad tax.
Thank you, Rodney. And if anybody has any specific questions or want to set up a meeting with their legislator on this issue here in Washington or in the district, by the way, they're home after today for the next 2 weeks. So it's a good time if you want to get to meet your legislator to go by, try to make an appointment because they are going to be home for a while. One of the longer recesses is this year till August. And this is a good time to talk to him about the BAP. So thank you for those comments, Rodney. So we're going to move on to, actually we have one question on the NAFTA. If NAFTA is changed, would we expect it to impact the maquiladora laws that were predated NAFTA? That's unclear at this point, but that's something we'll have to definitely watch out for. Okay, so let's move on to right to repair, which is actually going to be is going through a major development this year. The bill that was passed in Massachusetts and subsequently agreed to in an MOU to be followed nationwide by the vehicle manufacturers says that all the same information tools and software that they provide to their new car dealers they have to provide to the independent aftermarket at a fair and reasonable price. But beginning with the model year 2018, the car companies are going to be required to keep their software in a cloud that then is available to download to a generic computer on a subscription basis and then interface with the vehicle through a standardized interface, meaning J2534 specifications from the Society of Automotive Engineers. So these are pretty important developments that will be starting this summer, basically, as the new cars are introduced. Ray, you are president of CARE, and we're pretty involved, along with myself, on the development of right to repair and the passage in Massachusetts. Do you think the MOU and the law have been effective? Is it being complied by the car manufacturers? And what issues do you think still need to be resolved?
Well, I would answer this way. We still are monitoring repair facilities in Massachusetts and are not detecting too many problems. You've got more of that database than I do, Aaron. The other thing to be cognizant of is that the legislation clearly defined the beginning of this procedure, this interface procedure and capability with model year 2018. So effectively, as of January 1 of this year, when the 2018 model years will start rolling out, they have to be in compliance. Back in February, Auto Care Association and CARE sent a letter to all of the OEs that signed the MOU. I think there were 24 of them, asking for their level of compliance. Where are they in the process? Are they going to be compliant according to the Massachusetts law? We haven't probably got a third of those back, and all of them assure us in their correspondence that they will be in compliance. We haven't heard from a number of them, especially some of the larger manufacturers, and so that's given us a little bit of concern. We did file a bill in Massachusetts this year asking the Committee of Record to hold a hearing on compliance and ask the car companies to come to Boston and to explain to the committee where they are in that process. And that hearing, I think, is going to be in the early part of June in Boston. So we'll have a better idea there. But overall, the feel is yes, that they're, or I want to believe that they are making a good faith effort in complying. I'm sure we're going to find out otherwise, especially with a handful of manufacturers, and then we're going to have to just keep pounding on them to make sure that our customers, both DIY and commercial, have the access to the information they need to fix their vehicles.
I think one of the things that we're also concerned about is while the model year 2018 requirements, most of them have said they will comply with that, we don't know whether that will, the new way of doing diagnostics and repair, having it over the cloud, whether it will be applicable to previous model years. And we're trying to find out where the manufacturers are going to be on that issue as well. We have heard from a couple, such as Honda, that said it will, in fact, date back several model years, that they'll be able to access the information through the cloud. But it's by no means the rule for all the manufacturers that they'll be doing that. Rodney, right repair sort of started in California to some extent with the battle on SB 1146, which required the availability of emissions-related service information. How important do you think right repair is to the industry, and what is CAWA doing to ensure that it's working?
Well, let me just say it's critical to the industry, and I want to talk a little bit about what were the takeaways from that legislative effort back in the year 2000. It was Senate Bill 1146, assured that diagnostic and repair information tools and training regarding emission systems only would be provided to the independent repair facilities in par with the new car dealers. We had some major takeaways from that effort, given that the bill was signed into law after 3 or 4 years of effort. But to be successful legislatively, we needed, number one, we needed finances. It was very costly to get that law signed into, to get that bill signed into law. There was intense professional lobbying, and that's very necessary in order to have an impact in the government affairs arena. Most importantly, the aftermarket industry stayed united in support of the bill, although there were efforts by the opponents to pick off industry support, particularly the industry's repair segment, and we saw that too at the national level and in the state of Massachusetts. Also, the industry was very engaged. There were several in-district meetings held, telephone and letter writing campaigns were initiated, trips to the Capitol to sit, be seen, and to testify in the legislature's hearing room was crucial. And the industry sought out a strong legislator to author the bill and carry the water through the legislative process with his colleagues. Those were some of the takeaways from that effort, really the precursor to right to repair on a national basis. I think everybody on the phone agrees that continuous access to diagnostic and repair information as technological advances occur is crucial to the industry's future to remain competitive, viable, and relevant. CAWA will be there to continue that fight, and we have partnered with the Auto Care Association in their initiative to educate the industry, legislators, regulators, their staffs, and the motoring public about the importance of diagnostic and repair information being shared with the independent aftermarket.
Thanks, Rodney. One issue that that I know we've all been working on is access to telematics data, and I think that's going to be the subject of a future teleforum on itself, since it is such a major issue. So be looking for that coming down in the very near future. But that is obviously the ownership of data and access to data from embedded telematics systems is probably one of the next phases of right to repair that probably will need to be discussed. Tom, your company is very involved in advancing technology and coping with that, with the new vehicles coming down the road. Could you talk about what your wish list is, areas that you think need to be addressed from this new administration and Congress regarding the software and technology advances on vehicles?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. It's a great topic, and you know, in the past several years, there's been a lot of emphasis on, as you just mentioned, telematics, and Rodney and Ray just spoke to the right to repair. Both are critical issues to the automotive aftermarket, and we commend all of the efforts that have been going on in those areas. But the reality is, it's not far enough. Telematics, I mean, if you look at it or think about it from a telematics perspective, what good does it do to get, you know, data? Let's use as an example about, you know, your transmission is perhaps functioning, you know, less than efficiently, you know, at full efficiency, and you get that data through some telematics process, and so you know how to fix the car, what's wrong with it, but you can't get the part, because the part contains embedded software now that you know, is only available either through the dealership or through a licensed mechanic, you know, licensed by the motor vehicle manufacturer. Similarly, from a, you know, the right to repair perspective, again, it's a great initiative, but you know, the motor vehicle owner, when he purchases a car, purchases a copy of the software. And even through the right to repair process, you know, he's forced, you know, from the motor vehicle manufacturer to buy a second copy. And, you know, that just seems, at least to us, kind of fundamentally unfair. And, I mean, if you think about it from your own perspective, if you, you know, if your hard drive crashed on your laptop, you know, you could lawfully and easily, you know, move your Microsoft Office copy to your, you know, repaired hard drive or replacement hard drive, and it would be, you know, it happens every day. All of us, you know, whenever we have a crashed hard drive, we can do that easily. But you know, that right, according to the motor vehicle manufacturers, doesn't exist today with your vehicle. So you know, and this issue of embedded software and control modules is growing rapidly, as you said, Aaron. If you think back, even just the, you know, in the model year 2000 may have only had less than 10, you know, control modules on it. And if you look at the later model vehicles, take a 2015, could have as many as 70 control modules with as, you know, 100 million lines of code. And, you know, we expect, as, you know, the autonomous vehicle approaches, that number is going to continue to grow. So to answer your question, if we could wish our wish, we would wish that Congress would go further than the Copyright Office was willing to do last December when it issued its report on embedded software. That report basically left it to the courts, left it to litigation to resolve this issue. And we don't think that's the most efficient way. We would ask Congress to create a statutory framework so that motor vehicle owners, you know, could go to an independent mechanic that's not required to have a license from the motor vehicle manufacturer, or the motor vehicle owner, you know, could fix it himself by transferring the copy of the software that he owns or she owns in their motor vehicle to the replacement part, just like they do with any other, you know, with your personal computer. You know, to us, that's the real issue at stake here. In addition, you know, to the things that Rodney and Ray have talked about, and as I said, telematics is certainly critical as well. But we can't forget about this embedded software challenge that we have. So my wish would be that Congress fix this.
I think you raised some great points, Tom. What we see as a big concern is that we've always had in patent law a right to repair doctrine, where car owners always had the right to get their cars repaired and fixed by whoever they wanted to. But in copyright law, that has not necessarily been developed, because the software being embedded into vehicles is somewhat new, and it's taking the place of a lot of functional items, as you mentioned, that used to be handled by mechanical items are now handled by software. And car owners don't necessarily know whether they have that right, or even technicians know that. So clarification of the law, it seems to be a pretty important thing at this point, and I think you're right. The Copyright Office wanted to leave it to the courts, but that could take years and decades to finally to be resolved. While we think it might be resolved in our favor, by that point, it's not clear what will, whether consumers will have any access to replacement parts for a lot of these highly technical parts. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's discussion, and I'm by no means a technical expert, but there's certainly discussions of the OBD2 port disappearing, and how then the independent mechanics will get access. Beyond that is still unclear. The technology continues to change, and you're right. It does not do the aftermarket any good to have this kind of uncertainty. And it's certainly an expensive and uncertain proposition to have this resolved through years of litigation.
Thanks.
Aaron, let me ask this, Ray. Tom,
yeah, go ahead,
if we don't get embedded software issue fixed, what's going to be left to sell in an AutoZone store?
Well, if you took it to its extreme, not much. I mean, because it wouldn't be that difficult to embed software in almost any component of a vehicle. And if you connected it to the system, the computer system that the car runs in, and made it part of that system, and if the motor vehicle manufacturers could, in our view, misuse copyright law and prohibit parts manufacturers from making replacement parts, then virtually nothing, to answer your question, Ray.
I just want everybody on the call to understand the seriousness of this issue. It's a big one.
Yep.
Yeah, it is a big one. It is a big one, and CAWA is going to devote some time to that in June in San Diego. We've got Mike Keeley of Dorman Products coming to our leadership meeting to talk about this in detail. So we're looking forward to that discussion of embedded software.
Well, Mike knows more about this than perhaps anybody in the country today. So you got the right guy.
I think that'll be an interesting discussion. We got a question from one of our from our audience that I think is fascinating. We are seeing the growth of autonomous vehicles, or at least the discussion of autonomous vehicles and semi-autonomous vehicles, and the question was, how would that affect right to repair? And maybe I'll take a first stab at this and then turn it over to the panelists who may have their own views on this issue. Right to repair is not one technology or another. It's basically any information tools for vehicles that are introduced by the manufacturer has to be made available to the independent aftermarket. So you would say that any information to repair an autonomous vehicle needs to be made available to independents, just like they're made available to dealers. But I think we also have to understand some of the challenges that will come along with autonomous vehicles, in that they have to be repaired somewhat differently. You have a lot of different items on there that you would never see in a vehicle, from radar and sensors, that whenever you do one repair on one piece of that car, could affect the other. We have members who do wheel alignment, and if you realign a vehicle that has radar on it, you then change the whole trajectory of the vehicle, the way that radar is working. So that car has to be reprogrammed to work with that, to work with the, or to be adjusted to that change in the vehicle alignment. So it's much more complicated than ever. And so it's not just getting the information and tools. I think it's also going to be a case of a couple of things. One, making sure that the shops and people in the field understand the impact of some of these new technologies on the car. And then second, we have to work to get the manufacturers to do what they can to standardize and make sure that it's accessible to the independent aftermarket, which is sort of a right to repair type of issue. But right now, everybody is doing this differently. Every manufacturer handles the rekeying of a vehicle, the reprogramming of a vehicle once you make a change differently, and it's going to be quite a problem for both, even for dealerships in the not too distant future. So I think the other issue is, of course, the information and data flowing from autonomous vehicles that we need to make sure that the independents also have access to that data. Anybody else want to weigh in on that one?
I think that'd be a great subject for another teleforum, Mike Boyer. Just what does the American fleet look like 30 years from now, and how does that affect? How will that affect the automotive aftermarket? I would just add to what you said on the repair. I would think another concern is will there be less vehicles in the American fleet when autonomous vehicles become more prevalent?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Okay, I want to move on to Rodney's favorite subject, and that's California. California has always been sort of a bellwether state on environmental issues and other issues as well, but environment has really been.
Hey, can we change that somehow?
How's that? Yeah, well, Rodney's going to take care of it for us.
We've been promising for 20 years. I haven't seen it.
So the current administration appears to be heading in a different direction and attempting to deregulate industry more and rolling back some of the regulations that were put in by its predecessor, President Obama. Rodney, how do you see, we see sort of the administration and California moving in different directions on regulatory issues. Is this a clash that's coming down the road? How is it going to affect our industry? What is it we need to be doing to try to follow this this kind of, I guess, colliding trains maybe at this point?
Yeah, it appears to be that that will occur, although we don't know the details of that at this point. But I think our listeners, they have to hear the context in which California may or will challenge the Trump administration on emissions, toxic substances, and other environmental issues. I mean, politically, it's ripe for fights on many fronts. Hear this. All statewide elected officials are Democrats. The governor is a Democrat. The two houses in the legislature, the Assembly and Senate, both have Democrat supermajorities, which allows legislation supported by Democrats to move rather uninhibited through this sausage-making process. Republicans have essentially been pushed into an irrelevant position in California. Hillary Clinton won California in the recent general election over President Trump by over 4.3 million votes. So you can imagine that California will fight the Trump administration on virtually every issue dealing with the environment. Oh, and did I mention that the environmental lobby is very, very strong and very, very active in the Golden State. Additionally, in an unprecedented move, the state legislature hired Eric Holder, the former Attorney General in the Obama administration, to represent the state in legal battles with the federal government. Not knowing at this point the specific policy, budget, and structural changes the Trump administration may pursue regarding environmental issues, here are a couple of examples that California already has been thinking about. First, if the Trump administration significantly reduces the federal EPA or even eliminates it, California has introduced a bill, it's SB 409, which will adopt all current federal standards as it relates to the environment, health, water and air quality, an endangered species. Secondly, Senate Resolution 27 will assure California maintains its waiver protection cited in the Federal Clean Air Act, so they may continue to develop more stringent standards than the federal government, as we have seen in the past, as an example, catalytic converters. And finally, SB 49 will assure the Cal EPA survives in the event the federal EPA is significantly reduced or eliminated, because about 12% of Cal EPA's funds do come from the federal government. So, I mean, I think the battlefield is well set. I think those individual battles will come down the road, and I think given the political environment in this state, there's going to be tremendous clash between what goes on in the state of California and what might happen at the federal level.
I think it's interesting, you know, under the Clean Air Act, California is the only state that can set its own environmental regulations under the Clean Air Act. Other states can adopt the California rule, but it's the only state that can set its own environmental regulations. And it'll be interesting to see if those waivers from federal preemption are approved by the new Trump administration. It used to be a kind of a rubber stamp whenever California applied for a waiver from federal preemption for its own regulation. They were approved by EPA. But we're not so sure that that's going to be the story from now on, and that could set up some very interesting legal battles.
Yeah, ergo Eric Holder being retained by the California legislature. That
was a very interesting move. And I think it set sort of a signal for both sides of a battle that may be coming very soon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rodney. Anybody else want to weigh in on that issue?
Not to mention that the state of California has an unfunded pension plan that's what, $400 billion now, Rodney?
Yes, sir. It's both on the state level and even on the state local level. Plus, they
all do business out there because there's just so many people. It's what, the 5th largest economy in the world right now, I think. But what a mess.
Yeah, it's anywhere. It's noted anywhere from the 6th to 7th largest economy in the literature. You know, last night our legislature also passed a transportation bill. I think it's $52 billion over a 10-year period. And the crux of it is to add another 12 cents to the gallon of gasoline, the gas tax, in order to rebuild the infrastructure, particularly roads in the state of California. That, again, with a supermajority in the legislature, it's much easier to get these types of bills passed, particularly tax increases passed in this state, even though transportation money and the gas tax is one of the highest levels in the country. A lot of that money gets diverted. So they felt the need to put this package together, and it looks like Californians will be paying another 12 cents extra a gallon beginning sometime shortly. And as our governor pronounced, that's only $10 a month on average for most people. But you can imagine what that means for some people that can barely make it paycheck to paycheck. And we have one of the highest unemployment rates and one of the highest poverty rates in the country.
So
well, not to mention, Rodney, what effect it'll have on miles driven, too, which is one of our key indicators in our industry.
Yep.
So, Rodney, will CAWA be moving to Las Vegas soon?
The weather's too nice here in California to leave.
Okay. So we had a question that went back to our discussion on the border adjustment tax that I didn't want to forget. So this question asks, seems to be arguments that the dollar would strengthen due to the BAT, largely offsetting any cost increase. Do you think this is true?
I'm not an economist. We've had many economists weigh in on this, and the majority of them say no, it's not true. And I'm not willing, I'm not sure that we're willing to take that gamble. It may work out, but what happens in the interim? No, if you go back to the Affordable Americans for Affordable Products website, as Rodney suggested, there's a number of economic studies cited on there, and just take a look at those, and then make up your mind. But I don't think that's the reality. That will be the reality if the bat passes.
I mean,
And
it assumes that a lot of countries will float their currencies, which is not necessarily the case, especially China.
Right. And Aaron, there's so many other things too, and not that, I mean, this would obviously be a big driver, but there's so many other things that impact the value of the dollar. To just assume, to make an assumption like that, I agree with what Ray is just, I'm skeptical. I would be very skeptical.
So we're getting down to the end of our teleform, and I want to give the panelists one last shot to send a message to the administration. So if you could send a tweet to President Trump about our industry, the auto care industry, what would it say? So who wants to weigh it? Tom, you want to, Tom? Or?
Yeah, I'll start by saying I've never sent a tweet in my life, but since this is my first one, I would, and I go back to my favorite subject, that is, don't let motor vehicle manufacturers misuse copyright law to restrict the sale of parts in the automotive aftermarket. And hashtag something, I guess, but.
Rodney?
Yeah, I do tweet, but I may have too many characters in this tweet. What my tweet would be is the industry represents 4.5 million employees, 356 plus billion in annual revenue, 2.2% of the GDP of America, and is critical to the movement of people and goods.
Thank you. That's a good one. Ray?
I think it's more than 140 characters, though. Now, I'm on the same wavelength with Rodney. Mine is automotive aftermarket provides 2.2% GDP, 5 million jobs. Pay attention.
There you
Great.
go.
Thank you. I think it's good messages. So I want to do a little self-promotion before we close this teleforum. One thing is, first of all, we'll be doing our legislative summit October 3rd and 4th in Washington, D.C. And if you want to have an impact and find out how things are done in Washington, then attending the summit, I think, is a great way to do that. What we do at the summit is we have a day, October 3rd, on issue briefings. We'll also be having some great keynote addresses. We'll have Bob Woodward. I'm sure we'll have some interesting insights into what's going on right now. We're hoping to have someone from the Department of Commerce. We're not sure exactly who that will be, but talking about some of the big trade issues that are going on right now, which I think will be still key in October. And then the next day, on the 4th, we make appointments for you to go meet with your legislator. And for those who have done this before, I'm sure you would agree, this is a really, it's a great event. It's fun. It's a great way to get to know your legislator, but also to just see how things are done in Washington. It's a pretty interesting experience, and so I hope everyone will take advantage of that and come to Washington. Also, take advantage of the moments when they're at home. I mentioned they're home in the next 2 weeks, but anytime they're home, going to meet with your legislator is a really good thing to do. Even if you have you don't have a major message for them, getting to know them at this point when you don't have a major message is always a good thing. And if we can do anything to help you with that at AutoCare, we're more than willing to do that. In fact, I know we have some members in New Jersey that are having an in-district meeting today with their congressmen. So we're very supportive of that. And then finally, if you get involved politically, we need to elect people that are supportive of our industry. I can't think of a more important thing that we do is to get people in Washington and in the state legislatures that support our industry. And one of the ways you can do that is to support the political action committees. I know it's personal money, but it's a way that our industry can have a major say in what goes on here in Washington, both in getting people here that are interested and sympathetic to the small business, medium business, and just consumer choice issues that our industry represents. So please think about those things as you're, thinking about this teleforum. Any last points that anybody wants to raise before we end?
Well, just specific to your comments, Aaron, I mean, engaged in the political and governmental process is so necessary. Know the OEMs and their new car dealer system, they have millions of dollars in their PAC account. And our industry might have 200,000 in our PAC account. We can't match them dollar for dollar, but we can match them in engagement, involvement, people in the industry meeting with their local legislators. State associations can also facilitate that. It's so important to stay on top of what's happening both at the federal and state levels of government. Another key takeaway is if our industry is not at the federal and state lunch table, choosing what's good to eat and what's not good to eat, we may very well quickly notice that we're on the lunch menu.
Well put. Any other
Robbie
comments?
just stole my line.
He always does that.
I know it. I'm going to stop talking around him. He steals everything I come up with. And I would just add, we're as Rodney pointed out, we're a very small army. There's very few of us in the automotive aftermarket that are government relations practitioners, if you want to call it that. But that doesn't mean that every company can't have in the forefront the idea of that having a government relations, someone responsible as part of their duties in their respective companies is important. And I think it has been important through the entire 110-year history of our industry, and it's going to become even more important as we go forward. And so if you're in leadership of your company, or if you can influence leadership to prevail upon them to dedicate one of your associates just as a point of contact, or just to be thinking about how all this stuff coming down the pike, whether it be in California or whether it be in Washington or in your home state or even in your local municipality, is going to affect your business, and make sure that somebody that can do something about it, like an elected official, knows how that's going to affect your business, would be critically important. And I'll reiterate again Aaron's plug for the PAC. Auto Care Association has done a great job in expanding their PAC, but it's woefully underfunded compared to what NADA, which is the National Association of National Automobile Dealers Association, and the OEs spend in Washington. Now we can debate whether or not that's ethical or not, or it's the right course or whatever, but it's the hand we're dealt, and that's the war we're in, and we just need more soldiers, and we need more resources to try to level the playing field. I'm done. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Ray. Tom, anything?
Only just to add, as I became more involved in these topics, it was just kind of overwhelming to me what there was to learn. So I would just encourage everyone to learn as much as they can about the impact that these issues have on the industry. And then I'll just add the same plug. You really should support the aftermarket associations and their PACs, like Auto Cares. It's really important for us to do that.
Thank you. Well, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mike. I want to thank my panelists. It's very, great to have so many great people on our Government Affairs Committee, and this is sort of a sample of some of the great minds that help advise our staff on working on some of the big issues in the aftermarket. So thank you very much for participating. Thank you, everyone, for being on the phone call. And Mike, you want to close it out?
Yes, absolutely, Aaron. Thank you so much for facilitating this session. And Ray, Tom, and Rodney, guys, thanks so much. Very interesting and educational session. And we really, really appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge on these topics. Just one final plug for advocacy. To learn more about advocating for the Auto Care Association and information regarding the PAC, please go to autocareadvocacy.com, or I'm sorry, .org. That's autocareadvocacy.org. And there's a lot of information on that site that will guide you in learning more about all the things that Aaron and the panelists talked about today. Just one final quick announcement. Our next Manufacturers Rep Teleforum will take place on Friday, June 23rd, and the topic will be telematics. Again, we didn't talk a lot about telematics today because it's such a big, broad topic, and we expect to have some great panelists for that discussion as well. That does it for our teleforum today. Thank you again so much for participating.